Hi, I'm Mary, and if you're a single Christian woman over the age of 40, if you love God, but maybe you really don't love being single, this is for you. If you are over 40, I guarantee at some point, maybe recently, people have accused you of being picky. And this is a question that I get frequently. Mary, do you think you're single still because you're maybe too picky? And I know for me, the problem was not being picky. We'll get into that in a minute. But if you have people telling you things like, nobody's perfect and you need to be more open-minded and, you can't have such high expectations, especially at this age, then those are signs that people are questioning if you're too picky. And listen, I agree, nobody's perfect, and I agree that once you're over the age of 40, if you're a professional woman and you're looking for a professional man, that's a smaller dating pool. But I know for me, because I was trying to be not picky, I lowered my standards and actually just fully abandoned them for a while. So I want us to talk about the difference between being picky and having standards. I mean, you can make the argument that dating is a numbers game. And it is true that when I actually got some standards and started sticking to them, my dating pool decreased dramatically. When I loosened up my standards, there were a lot of available men for me to choose from. Does that create more opportunities? Yes. Does it create better relationships? Absolutely no. So if you're picky, then maybe you say something like, I only date men who are 6'4" or taller, or he has to have a full head of hair, or he has to be a professional athlete, or he has to make X amount of money. And a standard as a contrast would be saying, I want someone who's emotionally stable, financially responsible, treats me with kindness and respect. We have similar values, and we can build a life together. Those are not the same things. A lot of times being picky is based around something superficial, like looks or occupation, and having a standard is more about the quality of your life. And I had a friend of mine one time who said, when people ask me if I'm being too picky, I tell them I want a man who's got his life together, who's kind and respectful. Which one of those should I let go of? Because I think any reasonable person would say, no, you should keep all those. And I had a couple of girlfriends who for a few years would talk to me about, you're too focused on money and you shouldn't care about how much money the guy makes, which I completely disagree with, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But I noticed that the two of them were married to very successful men. So they didn't want to relax that standard, but they felt like I should relax it. Didn't really make sense to me. So I was dating a guy, and I'd actually known him. I mean, we kind of grew up together, and then we reconnected in adulthood. Now, he had been divorced 4 times and had declared personal bankruptcy twice. Now, when I told a friend of mine that I was just like really uncomfortable with this whole situation and I didn't think it was going to work out, she accused me of being too focused on money. But, here's the thing. When you're both broke in your 20s and you're struggling and you're building something together, that's kind of romantic. That's sort of what you would expect in that season of life. But once you're over the age of 40 and your finances are a mess, you've got multiple divorces, you've declared bankruptcy, you don't have anything going for your retirement, you don't have any type of insurance, you're barely paying your child support, that's not being picky, that's paying attention. And it's completely up to you. Listen, I know plenty of women, you might be one, I'm sure you know some, who after the age of 40 decided that, well, I don't really care about money. I just want a man who loves me, that I can share my life with, because I make plenty of money for both of us. And, you know, they find a man, maybe they get married, and he's, you know, kind of, you know, maybe he works, maybe he doesn't, and he's, you know, maybe not that interested in advancement. Eventually what starts to happen is she begins to resent him. Why doesn't he take more initiative? Why isn't he interested in furthering his career? Why isn't he interested in making more money? Like, girl, why should he? You're the breadwinner. And you knew that going in, so you can't have it both ways. You can't relax the standard and then be angry later because your guy isn't meeting the new standard. A lot of times I think women are made to feel guilty because we want certain things. A friend of mine told me that he doesn't really tell his daughter that she's pretty or beautiful because he didn't want her to believe that her value in life was based on her looks. And I said, okay, from a woman with this experience, let me tell you that if she doesn't hear that from you as her father, then any man who tells her she's pretty, she's going to be in love, and that's going to be a bad deal. And I know a lot of times, you know, in this particular cultural zeitgeist, parents are very afraid of, like, I don't want my daughter playing with, you know, a Disney princess, and I don't want her to feel like, you know, she has to wait for a man to rescue her. But certain desires are programmed into us by God as women. And so when we want something like emotional maturity, consistency, someone who will commit, somebody who is financially responsible, someone who is kind, who is reliable, those are not outrageous demands. Okay, what did I just say? Someone who's emotionally mature, someone who's consistent, they want a commitment, financially responsible. I'm not talking about he's got to be a CEO making millions of dollars. And then kind and reliable. Tell me which of those is so outrageous. But a lot of times as women, we're made to feel like, well, we're just asking for too much. We're just asking for the perfect man. Like, no, I'm not asking for a man who's perfect. I just want one who will be nice to me. The older we get, those things become more important, because the older we get, you know, things change. You start to have maybe health issues that you didn't have before. You start to lose, you know, people in your family. You know, maybe you're losing friends as, you know, people's health changes or whatever. And, you know, it becomes even more important to have that primary relationship that is a source of love and support and connection. Now listen, I mean, looks are going to change, careers shift. I dated for a short time a man who was the chief financial officer, and he told me, he said, do you know what the career life expectancy is for a CFO? Like, how long, once you become a CFO at a company, how long do you typically get to stay in that role? He said about 18 months. And sure enough, 18 months later, he was fired. That's the nature of that type of position. Okay, I know we look at people like, you know, when Steve Jobs was alive, or Jeff Bezos, or Tim Cook, and we think, you know, like someone might be a CEO for 20 years. Not necessarily. A lot of CEOs have a shorter lifetime, because if the company isn't performing the way the shareholders want it to, they will get rid of the top people. So, you know, things shift and things happen, but character matters. Okay, work ethic matters, integrity matters, how someone treats you matters, how they handle responsibility matters. I dated a guy that had told me that he was not permitted to see his daughter, and the reason was he wasn't paying his child support. Okay, to me, that's a deal breaker. If you're not even taking care of your child that you have now, and this was not a financial problem, he made good money, And also, then I started to feel like, well, I feel guilty with him buying my dinner because I'm literally taking food out of his daughter's mouth. Like, if you can afford to take me on dates, you can afford to be paying your child support. And if you can't afford your child support, you need to work that out with your child's mother. But to me, that was a huge red flag, because you're not even taking care of the human being that you are literally responsible for. Well, how are you going to take care of me? You won't even take care of her. Listen, when you start to really dial into your standards, get ready. You're going to shrink your dating pool. And, you can have standards that could be positive or negative. So what I mean by that is I have some like no-goes on the checklist. Okay, for example, criminal record, that's a no-go. Bankruptcy, no-go. Now, if you're 50 and you declared bankruptcy when you were 25, okay, maybe we can talk about that. Abusing alcohol, that's a no-go. Still married, no-go. Okay, those are what I would call standards that are, quote, negative, meaning if you meet these low bars, that's a no. And again, that's where, I've even had friends when I'll say, like, so-and-so asked me out and I know they don't have any money. Well, but maybe he's got like this secret stash of money that you don't know about. And be really careful about, your girlfriends will tell you fairy tales like that. Well, maybe he's a prince, and if you just kiss him, he'll turn, like, maybe he's actually, like he's got a trust fund, but he's not telling you about it because he wants to see if you're genuine. Don't listen to that garbage, okay? When you meet someone, and my response to that is like, well, listen, if he's deceiving me like that, that's a whole new level of problem. Like, that's almost a bigger problem than the financial situation. So when you get clear on what it is that you're looking for, what are your values? What is, what are the markers of the type of man you're looking for? I can tell you, for me personally, I want him to be at or above my financial position. I want him to be able to provide for me. Now, listen, I'm not planning on quitting my job anytime, but if I needed to, I want someone who can take care of me. I want someone that we can do things together. I would prefer to be with someone who has children, because I want a family, but I'm not having a baby at this point. So I would prefer a man who already has children. That means he's got to be taking care of them and participating in their lives and being responsible. If he shows up at my door and he's already buzzed because he's been drinking, or we meet at a restaurant and he's already at the bar and he's already slurring his words, that's a no-go for me. He needs to share my faith. He needs to be interested in going to church together. Those are not, I don't believe that any of those are crazy, unrealistic demands. Now, when people don't meet those and I say no, okay, I've had people tell me like, well, but you should at least go out with him. But if I already know that we're not going to be a good fit, that's a very irresponsible thing to do, because I may develop feelings for him, but I already know in advance it's not going to go anywhere. And I've had girlfriends tell me this, well, you could at least go and have a nice dinner, and, it's like, get a free dinner. Well, first of all, I don't need a free dinner. And secondly, how horrible is that to use a man and to say like, well, I already know I don't really like you, but, you're going to take me out and buy me dinner. So that's, I'll just go ahead and do that because I can't get a meal on my own. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, you're definitely putting yourself on the discount bargain bin at that point. So you have to be okay with the fact that, okay, I might have fewer people that I could potentially go out with, but you're not going to be wasting time on men that are not a good fit for you, because what happens when you're doing that is you're getting frustrated. You're getting frustrated, you're feeling defeated, you're just burning daylight, and you constantly, like, when I'm dating someone that's not the right fit for me, I know it, and I've always got it in the back of my head, And it means I'm never really free to enjoy the relationship because I'm constantly mind grinding on, well, what about this? And what about this? So, you know, when on this channel, what I talk about is having a wonderful life. That's getting to the place where you have a life where you have peace and joy. You are enjoying your life. It's not about getting to a place where you say, you know, I hate men, or I don't want a man because I want a man. But it's about getting to a place in life where you say, okay, I'm single. I wish I wasn't, but I don't know when the singleness is going to change. And so I'm going to enjoy my life. I want to have a rich, flourishing life where I am peaceful and happy and content. That's what a wonderful life is about, because when you're in that state, you really are in the best position to meet your Boaz, okay? Because he'll be attracted to a woman who is happy and content and peaceful. I mean, don't we all just want more of that anyway? Happiness, peace, and contentment in our lives. I mean, do you really need another angry person with drama in your life? No, of course not. So when you're living that wonderful life, you're in the best state to meet your soulmate, but then if he doesn't show up, you're still happy, and that's what you wanted the whole time anyway. Now, if you're struggling with heartbreak, it can be very difficult to have standards because you're feeling so broken and lonely. You kind of feel like anybody that comes along would be better than how I feel right now. And so if that's where you are right now, I want to offer you, I have a completely free teaching. It's in the link below the video. If you're listening to the podcast, it's in the show notes. It's called the ABCs of Healing, and it's a free training, completely free, on how to move past heartbreak so that you can get into that space where you can be clear about your standards and you can start to enjoy your life. So I hope you'll get that today and share this with a friend if you think you know someone who could use this. I want to thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.